Hello, nonprofit rock stars. This is Tom Check with Greater Impact Consulting, helping you get your Salesforce database under control so that you can focus on your mission. And today we are talking about basic administration stuff, specifically pick lists. Pick lists are often one of the most confounding types of fields that new administrators build, and it's because Salesforce interacts with them just a little bit differently than they do some other of the field types. So let's dive in today and go through the steps to create a new pick list, show you where you need to go when you want that pick list to show up for certain people and have certain options available in it, and figure out which record types it shows up on. Plus, we'll also touch very briefly on the difference between pick lists and multi-select pick lists. So with that being said, let's dive in. So here is just my development org, and let's say that we want to add a pick list onto our contacts object. And we want to identify if this contact is a youth or an adult, something very simple. The first thing we're going to need to do, of course, is go into setup. And we are going to build our new field on a contact object in the object manager. Once I'm in setup, I will just click on the object manager at the top. And once the object manager loads, I am going to pull up the contact field. Now I'll go into fields and relationships. And this is the same steps we would take anytime we make a new field. So this should be fairly comfortable for you. We'll go ahead and click on New. From here, I'm going to go down and I'm going to select either pick list or multi-select pick list. Now, the difference between the two is that a multi-select pick list allows you to select multiple options within the pick list. A standard pick list, you can only select one out of the list of values. So that's the difference. For this, we're going to go ahead and pick pick list. A lot of what we talk about today is going to apply to both of them though. And then just like every time I create a new field, I need to add a label. So we're just going to say youth or adult is the name of this field. Now, here's an interesting thing that pick lists have available. You can define these values for just this pick list, or Salesforce actually has a way to define global pick lists. Global pick lists are really, really valuable when you've got a set of values that you're going to use over and over and over again, and that if you were to change down the road, you want the change to apply to all of the pick lists in all of the objects that pick list, global pick list set is found in. So if you are changing, like if you wanted to make your prices on sales or something like that a pick list option, and you wanted to, in the future, make sure that all of the pick lists that use the field values or the price values get all updated at the same time when you change the price of something, you would want to use a global pick list, because once you go in and adjust the value set, it changes it everywhere. For a lot of stuff, we only need it on a single object in a single place, and so for a lot of times we're going to, just like today, we're going to enter values with each value separated by a new line. For this, I'm just going to say one is youth, one is adult. Now, down below, you can display them alphabetically. All of this stuff should make sense to you. We've covered this in other videos, so we don't need to do a ton of work on what is on that page. The next page is where it starts to be important to pay attention. Which profiles is this pick list available to? So even if you put this on a page layout and associate it with a record type, but you forget to assign it to a user's profile, they will not be able to access it. So I'm the system administrator. For demonstration purposes, that's really the only one I'm worried about. Of course, I can select if I want it to be read-only, but in this case, that wouldn't make sense for us because I need to be able to update it. So if I hit next, now I'm asked which page layouts to put it on. I'm going to leave it on all of my contact page layouts for this one. And that's all there is to it. That's all you need to do to create a new pick list. Now if I open up a contact real quick, I should see that my new pick list is automatically showing up on the page layout for my profile. By default, it should come in at the bottom here. So here we have youth or adult. And if I click the little pencil icon next to this to edit, I should have an option of youth or adult. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy, right? That's all well and good, except for oftentimes, after we set it up the first time, we decide we want to change the values in there. Maybe I misspelled something, maybe I need to add one or remove one, and that's where pick lists can start to get a little tough to understand sometimes. So if I go back into my fields and relationships, and let's say I want to add a third option. As we see, if I come down here, pick list fields have a little more information available to them after they're created. If we scroll down, we can see that we've got values right down here. So I can deactivate a value, I can activate inactive values. I can also add new values, reorder, replace, or create a printable view. For the instance of today, we're just going to say that I want to create a new value, and I'm just going to call it temp. Now, one thing you'll notice is as you scroll down, all of a sudden you get to pick which record types, which contact record types this option is available to. So that's something we didn't select when we created it. It assumes that all of our record types that we add it to want that all of them should have all of these options. But when we're adding individual fields, individual options to our pick list, it asks us which contact record types you want to add this to. If you zoom through this and you don't hit any of them, which is definitely an option, temp will not show up on any of those record types. For the sake of today, we're going to say that I want to display this on all record types. And then if I go back to John Doe and I refresh, what I should see is that as I go into youth or adult, I've got a new option called temp. Scroll down here, go to my youth or adult field, and now I see all three options. I see adult, I see youth, and I see the new temp field down at the bottom there. So that's the basics, right? How can we adjust where this shows up after the fact? Because you don't want to have to just delete one of these options if you want it to stop showing up. To do that, we would go back to the field relationships and we would click on, first off, let's look at our field level security. Now, field level security just makes sure that the whole field is available to these profiles. So that's where you would go if some people can see it, but some people can't. It's likely a profile issue. If it's just that some record types have the fields you want and not the others, the values, what you would do is you would go to your record types section. And under record types, we're going to see that each of these record types down below, when we just click on the record type, has pick lists available for editing. So in here, what I can do is I can actually select it so that this record type does not have certain options available. So if I were to remove temp from the youth record type and I hit save, then when I go back to John Doe, who is, let's say, a youth contact, what I should see is there's only two options in here now, youth and adult. Temp has been removed. However, if I go to another contact, let's say my contact, what I should see is that all three options are still available in there because it is not a youth record type. And in here, I see all 3 available. So if you're struggling to get your pick list values to show up on the right record type, instead of looking at the field, you have to go into the record type, scroll down to pick lists available for editing, find the one you're looking for, click edit, and then move the available fields back or forth to suit your needs. Now this is the same thing that happens when we interact with multi-select pick lists. For instance, volunteer interests, I know, is a multi-select pick list. If I open up my pick lists available for editing, I think it's volunteer availability. Here is a multi-select pick list, and it's the same thing. I can make it so that only certain options show up for this record type. Now, if I wanted to make sure that a certain option is not available on any record type, I would go back to Fields and Relationships, and I would actually deactivate that option. So if I go back here, and I go to Adult or Youth, what I would want to do is, let's say, deactivate this value. Now what deactivation does is it just makes it so that it's no longer available to select when you're going into a contact. If a contact is already marked as temp and then it becomes deactivated, it will still show up on the contact, but you won't be able to save it with temp in there. It'll ask you to update. If I really wanted to get rid of something, I can delete a value, and what it should ask me for is what do I want to replace it with? So let's say I'm deleting youth and everybody's just going to get marked as adult. I would go in, or I'm deleting adult, and everything else, everybody who's currently marked as an adult is going to get marked with either youth, or I can mark them as a blank value. And that'll just depend on your use case as far as which way you approach it. So that's the basic lowdown on pick lists. The only other thing I'm going to bring up is one thing that I know can be really frustrating when you are building, say, a formula field that references a pick list. Let's step through this real quick. If I build a formula that references a pick list, because a pick list is a special kind of field, oftentimes I get an error in my formula. So I'm just going to call this test formula, and I'm going to say that this is a checkbox. And what I want to do is, if the pick list equals adult, mark it as checked. If it is marked as anything other than adult, I want it to be unchecked. So if I go in here and I select my merge field, which is youth or adult, let's go to advanced formula, insert field, youth or adult, and insert that. If I say if youth or adult equals adult, true, otherwise false. Normally that would work really well, but when I hit check syntax, what it's going to do is it's going to give me an error saying that pick list fields are only supported in certain functions. So a lot of times if you want to reference something that's in a pick list field, you actually have to turn it into a string first, or a set of text. So I can say text of just this field, which all that does is it pulls it out into a comma-separated value text string. If the text of youth or adult equals adult, true, otherwise false. Then if I hit check syntax, it should pass, and it does. So that's the other trick to know about your pick lists, especially when you're dealing with single pick lists and multi-select pick lists, is that formulas, roll-up fields, stuff like that that reference them are going to be more finicky than they are with other types of fields. So you're going to need to learn how to use those text functions and other functions like it to get around that. So that's all for today. I hope this has been useful for you in learning to use pick lists. I know that that can be a really challenging thing for a new administrator to be able to do, especially when you're so focused on running your nonprofit and you don't want to be stuck in Salesforce all day. So hope that helps. If you have any challenges or any questions along the way, don't hesitate to reach out to me. And until next time, stay awesome and keep creating a great impact in your community.